Oh my God, is it cold out there, kids? We are definitely in the darkest depths of winter. Even Florida getting record snowfall. It is cold outside the Sports Frenzy studios. But hopefully, my hot takes will warm you up. I'm joking about that. I do not want to ever be considered a hot take artist. Those are the lamest people in sports media. And of course, we all know the Maestro. Kevin Crane is not lame. How you doing out there in podcast land? Welcome to the latest, greatest episode of Sports Frenzy 2.0. Yes, we all want the Conquistador's vacation schedule. He is off yet again this week. It's all because of the way the holidays fell, and now today, as we record on January the 22nd, 2025, it is his birthday. So, of course, he had to have Christmas off, he had to have New Year's off, and he takes his birthday off. Everything aligned just perfectly for Dave, but that will never happen again. He will now have to work straight through until 2032. I'm just kidding. Maybe. So, for one last time for the foreseeable future, you're stuck with me as I break down the NFL divisional round, the college football championship, the hellish landscape that is Major League Baseball, all that good stuff. Plenty of bitching and pissing and moaning. For me, the most eloquent and literate bitcher, pisser, and moaner out there. Once again, I am your humble and gracious host, the Maestro, Kevin Crane, and let's get into it. Starting as always at this time of year with the NFL. We are down to the Final Four in the National Football League. Last weekend was a mixed bag. Every game had something interesting going on in it. Some positive, Jayden Daniels. Some negative, the referees in the Chiefs-Texans game. But we will get into all of that as we start off Saturday afternoon, January the 18th, with the aforementioned Chiefs-Texans game in Kansas City, where the Chiefs won 23-14. Now, I'm not saying the referees handed the game to the Chiefs, but boy, they helped a lot. When Troy Aikman sounds like he's having an aneurysm in the booth because of these bad, stupid, terrible calls, and then I have tried to defend Patrick Mahomes as much as humanly possible on this show, despite the fact I pretty much despise everything else about the Kansas City Chiefs. I have tried and tried to defend Patrick Mahomes. And it's not his fault if they're going to make the calls that they made. The two egregiously awful penalties involving him in roughing the passer or unnecessary roughness, because one time he was actually a runner and not back in the pocket. Those two calls were awful. Absolutely awful. And where the hell is the expedited replay? And I know they tried to explain it and say, if there's any kind of contact whatsoever, even if it's not contact to the head or neck area, it can't be reviewed. What the fuck is that? That's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of in my life. So the Chiefs get the benefit of not only one, but two terrible calls. Both times, of course, they were in 3rd and long, and they got a first down in both situations. But then Mr. Mahomes decided to take it to another level later on in the game when he was barely pushed. I'm not kidding you, barely pushed. When he was again a runner on the sidelines, right at the edge between the playing field and the white line. And he threw his arms out, flailing and flapping like LeBron James. A disgrace. Shame on you. Shame on you, Patrick Mahomes. This year, really, I think, has put a little ding in your legacy. You're still going to the Hall of Fame. You're still a first ballot Hall of Famer. But this year has not looked good for you, despite the record in the regular season. Despite the fact you're, again, at home in another AFC championship game. And I will be firmly 100% rooting against the Kansas City Chiefs. Make no mistake. I've already made my point about how much I despise Andy Reid, and he is a phony, and he has fooled all of you. Travis Kelce's just a doofus. I don't care if he's dating Taylor Swift or not. And now what? He's lining himself up for a three-way with Tay-Tay and Caitlin Clark? What are we doing here, kids? But the Chiefs still get to advance. Despite what I thought was a very valiant effort by the Texans defense, by the way. Will Anderson is a beast. He was a one-man wrecking crew. And if it wasn't for, again, the stupid calls, Will Anderson might very well have been the best player on that field and the most valuable player on that field last Saturday. But the NFL and the football gods wanted the Chiefs to move on, so there you go. It's happened again. And we'll discuss the Texans and their problems and their issues at the end of the show, and you all know what that means. The late game, Saturday night. One of the biggest playoff upsets we've seen in quite a while. The number one seed in the NFC, the Detroit Lions, getting beat by 2 touchdowns by Jayden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. Yes, a rookie quarterback who will now forever be linked to my man in Chicago, Caleb Williams. Of course, we'll get to the Bears in a few minutes, and the very, very, very good news for the Bears. And I told you last week my problems with Jayden Daniels. And they are silly, ridiculous, illogical problems. I acknowledge it. I do. Okay? I do. It's too good to be true. It's too much. It's too soon. Something is going to break here. Whether it's this year or next year, this has kind of the stink of RG3 all over it. And I am not trying to compare the two, even though they played for the same team and were both very, very high quarterback draft picks. But Jayden Daniels and company picked the Lions apart. And when I say picked, I guess I should be talking about Jared Goff, who now, if I'm a Detroit Lions fan, I wonder, can I really and truly can I trust this guy? Can I trust this guy? Had a bad moment last year in the NFC Championship game. Some would say maybe cost them a slot in the Super Bowl that went to the 49ers instead. Now he just has a complete and total meltdown against the Washington Commanders. Vastly inferior opponent, by the way, to last year's 49ers team. And the Lions, I believe, were playing on the road in that one and still put up a fight. Here at home in Detroit, not really much positive to take away from this. And again, to me, one of the biggest upsets we've seen in the latter stages of the playoffs in a long, long time. So now we'll discuss here in a few minutes, where do the Lions go? What do the Lions do? And I'm not trying to pick on Jared Goff, because you can tell by the fact that the Commanders put up 45 points, 45-31. Where's Aaron Glenn's vaunted defense? Yes, I know, no Aiden Hutchinson, but still, you would have expected at home a better performance from the defense. So it's not all on Jared Goff. Plus, he got clocked at one point. Shocked that that call was not made. Blow to the head, regardless of the fact that he was trying to tackle a defender as he was coming back after a pick. You're still, last time I checked, you're still not allowed to hit a guy in the head or face area, regardless of what position they're playing or if the ball has been turned over and switched hands. So a lot of people speculating he played the latter part of that game with a concussion. Still, I won't blame him for the entire game, but I am not exonerating him at all. I think you're two big goats, and not goats in the good way. Goats in the bad way are Aaron Glenn and Jared Goff. And this has got to be crushing for Detroit Lions fans. Absolutely crushing. And even though I'm a Bears fan, I feel for the Lions fans. I do. Now, if it was the Packers, I'd be laughing and laughing and laughing maniacally, like a villain in a Bond movie. But I do feel for the Lions. I know people close to me who are Lions fans. Even with the Vikings. Even with the Vikings, I wouldn't necessarily hate it if they'd won. But they choked as well. The Packers are the one team that I will always, always, always root against in any way, shape, form, or permutation. So Chiefs win Saturday. Commanders win Saturday. We move on to Sunday, January the 19th. And the weather becomes a major factor in both of these games. Sunday afternoon, the Eagles host the Rams. This was a good game, but an odd game. Jalen Hurts is still getting beat up. Now he's got a knee issue as he got bent backwards. That passing game for the Eagles still doesn't look quite right. Luckily, they have Saquon Barkley, but here is my issue. The Eagles did win 28-22. And Saquon Barkley again went off for the second time this year against the LA Rams. That's the key. Saquon Barkley pretty much won this game all by himself. Saquon Barkley now, by the way, 2,329 total rushing yards, including the playoffs, in the 2024-2025 season. That is the third best overall season ever. And you know who has the top two? And the reason why, despite a short career, he's in the Hall of Fame? Number one, number two, Terrell Davis of the Denver Broncos. That should put into perspective how great of a year Saquon Barkley is having. And I will still sit firmly, doesn't matter if we're talking basketball, football, baseball, Hockey, the four major team sports. I think the MVP award should include the postseason. I have been saying this for years. It's stupid to award somebody an MVP in many ways, especially when we're talking NHL or NBA. Maybe not so much baseball and football, but a regular season that doesn't really matter all that much in the grand scheme of things. You're going to award an MVP, the most prestigious award, the most prestigious individual award in team sports, based on a somewhat kind of important regular season. Include the postseason. Because right now, Saquon Barkley would be making a more serious run at MVP than he is right now. The Rams put up a good fight. The Rams did put up a very, very good fight, despite the fact that I had a feeling once I heard the weather forecast that this was not going to work out the way they wanted it to. You saw the ball slip out of Matt Stafford's hands, an egregious fumble. And it's not like the Eagles' defense played lights out. The Rams were able to move the ball. And they did have a shot at the end of getting down the field and winning the game, potentially winning the game. And Matt Stafford made an errant pass. Eagles win. Was I impressed with the Eagles? Hate to say it, I was kind of more impressed with the Rams. Again, playing in an environment they're not used to. And that's really no excuse. But they played better than I thought they would. They had the mistakes. And that's what it all boils down to. And I think this postseason so far, above all others, for me and my sports addled brain that's so full, chock full of sports memories and stats and all that other gobbledygook, I can't remember a postseason where it was so blatantly obvious that one mistake, let alone two or three, were going to cost you a game. Look back to last week in the wild card round. Jumping back here real quick, one more time to the Commanders-Lions game. The Buccaneers had one terrible mistake. You could say two, but one awful turnover that cost them that game. And they lost at home to the Commanders by 3 points. Detroit lost by 2 touchdowns, and they were supposedly the much better team. And they made a lot more mistakes, turned the ball over a lot more, and that is something that I give the Commanders a ton of credit for. They don't turn the ball over. So finally, wrapping up Rams-Eagles. You can't make the mistakes, and the Rams just had a couple, but it ended up costing them in the end. A valiant effort, and overall the Rams have got to come away from the season feeling pretty good about themselves. They have got one of the most exciting young defensive players in Jared Verse, one of the most exciting young offensive players in Puka Nacua. Now the question is, how many years left do you have with Matt Stafford? Is Cooper Kupp washed up? But the Rams are a smart organization. They've got a smart head coach. I think they will figure it out. And they are turning into the modern day Pittsburgh Steelers, where year in, year out, doesn't matter if they traded away all their draft picks to win a Super Bowl, they are smart enough and good enough to just reload year after year after year. So don't cry for the Rams. Then finally we get the knockdown, drag-out, headlining showdown we had all been waiting the whole week for. On Sunday night, the Baltimore Ravens going up to Orchard Park to face off against the Buffalo Bills. And again, this game boiled down to mistakes. And the Ravens were the ones that made them. The Bills did not. The Bills had a very conservative game plan. They didn't put up a ton of yards. Their offense didn't look overly dynamic. But they didn't make the mistakes. So now, how does this game sit with Lamar Jackson's legacy? I think I already went into a rant a week or two ago about Lamar Jackson. And I think he's a phenomenal football player. And I think he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But if you're going to tell me now he's going to win a third MVP, bear this in mind. I did the research. We have never had a two-time MVP in the Super Bowl era. A two-time MVP who has never made it to a Super Bowl, let alone a three-time MVP. And Lamar Jackson right now, if he wins his third MVP, will go down as not only never making a Super Bowl, but only getting to the AFC Championship game once. So my problem isn't so much with anointing him MVP this year, because I'm not overly impressed with Josh Allen either. I still would give it to Saquon Barkley. Because I'm sick and tired of the bias against every other position except for quarterback when it comes to the MVP. But you're looking at a three-time NFL MVP who always seems to underperform in the playoffs and in crunch time when it matters the most. So, what happened in this game? The Bills win 27-25. Early on, Lamar was the GOAT, and again, not in a good way. Lamar threw an absolutely horrific interception and then had an abysmal fumble. Again, you want to blame the weather, that's fine, but in the end, both teams have to play under the same circumstances. So 2 first half turnovers by Lamar Jackson. He did not look all that great in the first half, and the narrative was really pushing in a negative direction for him. Now in the second half, they got the offense figured out. They started to run the ball more, started to use Derrick Henry more, and things started to work better for the Ravens. And they were going toe-to-toe with the Bills. Again, the Bills playing very conservatively, in my opinion, throughout the game. Then you go from the first half where Lamar Jackson is your scapegoat to the second half where it all turns into Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews catches a ball. If he just plows forward and maybe just goes down, setting the Ravens up in great field position to keep a drive going. Instead, he tries to, as somebody else said, I will not take credit for it, but I know somebody else said, he tried to be like Tyreek Hill, make a bunch of moves. You're a big, clumsy white guy. What are you fucking doing? Fumbles the ball, Bills recover. And then, of course, by now you all know about what happened at the end of the game. Yes, the Bills would have had some time on the clock to possibly go down and win the game with a field goal, but Baltimore Ravens go down and score. They go for the 2-point conversion to tie the game. Does this or does this not sound familiar to early in the season with the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs? Except in this case, instead of it being a very, very slight toe touching out of bounds, and it was out of bounds, nobody's disputing that. But now we go to Mark Andrews bumbling, fumbling, stumbling, can't catch a 2-point conversion pass, which I understand the criticism of Lamar Jackson, and they're saying it wasn't a perfect pass. But my God, he's supposed to be one of the top tight ends in the league. He's got to catch that ball. It wasn't that egregiously bad of a pass. It was a slight bit low and behind him. But there was nobody around him. Nobody around him. And this again, coming off the fumble earlier in the game. So I'm not weeping any tears for Mark Andrews. And I've heard one or two people out there in the sports media say they're going to have to let him go. They're going to have to trade him and get him off the roster, despite the fact that maturely the Ravens as a whole, the organization, because they're extremely well run, everybody backed him up. Even though Mark Andrews cowered and wouldn't talk to the media for 2 days after what happened, that's on Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is a coward. Face the facts. Face up to what happened. So now, based on that, based on what happened in that game, based on his reticence to even get in front of a microphone or a camera and explain things and say, I'll take ownership of this. It's on me. But for him to slink away like a coward just compounds the issue. And so I would tend to agree they need to get rid of him. They need to get rid of him. They need to trade him, get him over to the NFC. You got Isaiah Likely to take over as starting tight end. But I just don't like the way this game and what happened afterwards, how it all played out with respect to Mark Andrews. In terms of Lamar Jackson, I think this just reinforces what I said. Great player, phenomenal all-time regular season player, Hall of Famer. But he's going to have to prove to me and you and everybody out there in the sports world that he is deserving of top-level honors, top-level consideration. Because right now, I don't even think I have him in the top 20 all-time in terms of quarterbacks, yet he's most likely going to be your 3-time NFL MVP here very, very soon. So there's your divisional round recap. We will get to our AFC and NFC conference championship picks in a few minutes, but we've got to go around the league, discuss some odds, some ends, some tidbits, and of course huge sports news as it pertains to the NFL and particularly the 3 teams that we follow here on Sports Frenzy. And that would be where we start. So a week ago, let's go back a week. Let's go back in the Wayback Machine. Do some Wayne's World. After we did last week's podcast, the Bears reached out to the Pittsburgh Steelers, asking if they could interview Mike Tomlin. Talks, of course, of a trade. It would have to be a trade, and that was all shot down by the Steelers, by Mike Tomlin. So let's say this. Late last week, going into the weekend, I was scared to death that the whole Mike McCarthy thing was going to come to fruition. Did not want it. Did not want to see it. But very worried. Very, very worried. And then the Rooney Rule, I'm not a fan of the Rooney Rule. And it's not because I have a wonderful and generous heart. It's because I'm not a big fan of affirmative action. It's garbage. We should be interviewing people based on merit and merit alone. And now I find out here through this hiring cycle where the Bears, I know the Bears reached out to a bunch of minority candidates and interviewed them, but I guess a Zoom interview doesn't count. So they had to bring in one minority candidate for a face-to-face interview. And it ends up being the great former Tennessee Titans running back, Eddie George. And that came out of nowhere. Who I believe is coaching at a school on the lower level of D1. Which still confuses me. The FBS, the FCS. Jesus God. What happened to D1, D2, D3? But anyway, I feel bad for Eddie George because I feel like Eddie George got used because of this stupid Rooney Rule. But again, I will point out the Bears didn't necessarily circumvent the rules. I know they reached out to a handful of other minority candidates and interviewed them, but Zoom, again, doesn't count. It's a stupid, idiotic rule. And you have got to have faith in the system, that the system will work. We will get black head coaches. We're getting them right now. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Despite the fact that Gerard Mayo and Antonio Pierce got fired, those positions will be filled by an equal amount of minority candidates. So the Rooney Rule needs to be scrapped because it's an insult. And I know people say it's still practice. It's an interview. It's still practice for the future. I get it. But how about you let us hire the people who are best qualified to take on the job? I know, sounds simple, but in this stupid world, doesn't seem to work out that way, does it? So what happens here? The Bears, in a way, got lucky. With the Lions losing to the Commanders, that opens up the door for their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, and their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, to both be available for immediate hiring. And so guess what happened here over the last 48 hours? Taping here on Wednesday night, January the 22nd, 2025. This will drop tomorrow morning, the 23rd. The Bears throw a ton of money at Ben Johnson, who I do truly believe was their number one target all along. The Bears finally do something right, even if they overpaid for it. And I shouldn't say the only time. I still think Caleb Williams was the right pick in the 2024 draft. I'm not going to look back and go, oh, we should have taken Jayden Daniels. What am I going to do then? Go back and say, oh, we should have taken Patrick Mahomes instead of Mitch Trubisky. Well, no duh. Revisionist history will always work for the cynics and the critics. But you can't go back in the DeLorean. You can't fire it up to 1.21 gigawatts and change things. So I'm fine with Caleb Williams, and now the coach that he needs is in place. Am I 100% sold? Absolutely not. But this was the best possible candidate outside of John Gruden, who I think is still being blackballed and is not going to get a job again in this coaching cycle, which is a shame and a travesty, and I blame it all on Roger Goodell, who, by every day that passes, I lose more and more respect for. I did not think it was possible to have as little respect for Roger Goodell as I do for Rob Manfred in baseball, but it's getting there. It's getting there. So Ben Johnson supposedly signs a deal with the Bears around $13 million a year, making him one of the highest paid head coaches in the NFL already as he takes his first head coaching job. Wow. Wow. And then on the flip side, the defensive side for the Lions. And I mentioned minority candidates. Aaron Glenn. A lot of teams wanted Aaron Glenn. See, you didn't need the Rooney Rule. You didn't. Because people talked to Aaron Glenn and said, this guy's got something. Now, unfortunately for Aaron Glenn, I feel bad for him. Now he's going back to a team that he used to play for. But that team is a mess, whereas the Bears still have something in terms of talent. They have a lot of cap space, and they have a high draft pick this year. They can rebuild their offensive line. They can get some pieces on defense. They've already got a solid running game, 2 solid wide receivers, a good tight end. The Jets are a mess. The New York Jets are an absolute mess, but Aaron Glenn's going to take on the challenge. Aaron Glenn is going to be the new head coach of the New York Jets. And there seems to be inevitable comparisons between the Chicago Bears and the New York Jets. Weak ownership, constant mistakes when it comes to drafting and hiring. Both teams do have one legendary title to their names. Joe Namath, of course, predicting a Super Bowl win and getting it. And, of course, the Bears, the 85 Bears, arguably the greatest team in football history. And I am not being a fan. That's just a fact, Jack. But that's it. That's it for those teams' respective histories. The Bears got to go to one more Super Bowl, should have won it, failed miserably, should have started Kyle Orton over Rex Grossman. They were spotted. They got a 7-point lead because of the great Devin Hester. I'm not going down that road. I'm not. But I'm going to compare the Jets and the Bears. And these two teams, again, inextricably linked. Here again, not only in the similar histories the two teams have in the Super Bowl era, but now they both decide to hire coaches from the same team, the Detroit Lions. One gets the offensive coordinator, one gets the defensive coordinator. These two teams somehow are linked. The fan bases are similar in their passion. Now we'll see what happens in Dallas and New Orleans and Jacksonville, Las Vegas, the openings that are still left. Very interesting, though, how this dings the Lions. And if you want to keep that little train rolling in terms of the damage now that's going to be done to the Lions because of success, but not the ultimate success, not only do they lose their offensive coordinator, not only do they lose their defensive coordinator, but the next in line to be the defensive coordinator is now gone. as we'll move on here to some coordinator news, because now coordinators have become almost as important as the head coach. So it's very, very important that we pay attention to the hirings and firings of the offensive and defensive coordinators around the NFL. New England, of course, we know they jumped on Mike Vrabel as quickly as they could, brought him back into the Patriots camp. He's got his defensive and offensive coordinator set now. For the third time, Josh McDaniels will be the New England Patriots offensive coordinator as he comes back once again to the Boston area. New England is not that far away. They got a quarterback, now they've got a head coach. They look like they're setting up a very, very solid coaching staff. They got plenty of cap space. They could be 2 years away from being in the playoffs again. But now coming back to the point I was making about the Lions. New England's new defensive coordinator is Terrell Williams. Now, he formerly worked with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. But the interesting thing about Vrabel poaching him now is that he was next in line in Detroit. I believe he was a defensive line coach. He was probably going to be the heir apparent to Aaron Glenn's position. And now he's gone. So now we're really going to see how smart this front office and how smart Dan Campbell is in Detroit. In terms of players, they should be okay. They might lose one or two guys to free agency, but in no way, shape, or form are we looking at a disaster for Detroit. But you got to wonder if the window is starting to close for them. All right, we know Cincinnati parted ways with defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. He will now take over as a defensive play caller for the Indianapolis Colts. I will be interested to see what he can do. He's going from a team that doesn't spend money in the Bengals to a team that kind of sort of does in the Colts. But I just don't know if Anarumo doesn't have the horses. Is he really that good of a defensive coordinator? And going back to the Bears for a second, by the way, it's not official yet, but rumors are they want Dennis Allen as their new defensive coordinator behind Ben Johnson. I don't know how good of a hire that is. I really don't. Bears fans are over the moon ecstatic about Ben Johnson. If you look, the only thing Dennis Allen has going for him is the fact that he was trusted enough by Sean Payton, who I love. Sean Payton trusted Dennis Allen, so I guess I'll trust Dennis Allen. But if you look at his numbers, and I'm not talking as a head coach, I'm talking strictly as a D coordinator, they're not that good. They're not that good. So I'm worried about that. This is another reason why I'm not 100% sold on Ben Johnson. You always have to look at both sides. There are overwhelming positives with Ben Johnson, but there are a few negatives. And then another thing that he said as he walked into the compound, and they had it posted on Bears social media, and everybody, first level, second level, around this big common area, clapping and cheering for him, which they should. Again, could be the best coaching hire for the Bears since Mike Ditka. But his comments about how everybody in the organization has to serve the players in the locker room kind of hit a bad note with me. I'm old school, you guys know that. I don't want to kiss the players' asses. They're already getting paid tons of money, get paid tons of money, then you should be expected to do a job. You don't need the entire staff of the Chicago Bears told, first thing from the new head coach, make sure you pamper these players. And I know I'm paraphrasing, but I'm reading between the lines, and that's what I'm hearing. He sounds like he's going to be a little bit of a coddler, which I don't like. And by the way, we'll get to that at the end of the show with another coach I really like, but has some coddling issues. So back on track here. The Falcons have a new defensive coordinator, and that is former Jets interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich. I don't know if that really blows anybody's doors off, but I'm not a Raheem Morris fan, so it does not shock me in the least that he's making stupid and silly moves. And I know it's the front office is also involved. Keep in mind again, this was a front office last year that could have hired Bill Belichick and decided to go with Raheem Morris. And threw a ton of money at Kirk Cousins, who now might be let go and end up being a bridge quarterback somewhere else. Moving on to my Buccaneers. Sticking with the coordinator talk, though. The Jacksonville Jaguars were coming hard after offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. The Bucs have been very lucky, and I can't believe Todd Bowles has had a hand in this. Back-to-back outstanding offensive coordinators. First Dave Canales, who is doing some good things down with the Panthers now as their head coach, and now Liam Cohen. But the Buccaneers did the smart thing, the right thing. They threw money at Liam Cohen and said, please, please, please stay. Please, 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 Baker loves you. I don't know if that happened, but Liam Cohen got paid. He will stick around with a new long-term deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I wonder, even though this has not been expressed by anybody out there in the media, I wonder if he wasn't promised, once Todd Bowles' time is done, you get to take over as head man here by the Bay down in Tampa. I wouldn't be shocked if we hear that that was the little sweetener that got Liam Cohen to stay and not move over across the state a little bit north to Duval County. But now the Buccaneers have been a very successful franchise here recently, so they're going to take some hits too. The Lions probably, among all the teams, took the most devastating hits. But the Buccaneers lost their assistant general manager, John Spytek. What a name, by the way. What a name, Spytek. Bucs assistant general manager John Spytek will now be the new general manager for, wait for it, the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, Tom Brady poaching the assistant GM from his former team. Tom Brady did not get Ben Johnson, but that doesn't mean there still were not shrewd moves on the table to be made. And this is a very shrewd move by Tom Brady and the front office for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now they just need to get a head coach. And we're seeing a lot of the big names are off the board now. So who's left? Who's left? Brian Flores has got to be the biggest name sitting out there, right? Not much to discuss with Dave's Dolphins. I'm not trying to be mean because he's not here. Don't take it that way, kids. But they will be the home team on the 2025 schedule when it comes to the first game in Madrid. How about that? Then, of course, sticking with coaching, but somebody's actually staying where they are, just like Liam Cohen, Kevin O'Connell. And I could not believe hearing all these rumors about, oh, people want to trade for, of course people want to trade for Kevin O'Connell. People want to trade for Mike Tomlin. They're great coaches. Why wouldn't they want to? But why would their current teams want to let them go? So just like Mike Tomlin and the Steelers shot down any talks of a trade, Kevin O'Connell inks a multi-year extension with the Minnesota Vikings. Great coach. Great coach. And he hasn't had a ton to work with on offense outside of Justin Jefferson. Think about what he's gone through with the quarterback situation. And now he's going to have to deal with another possible transition there. Very good head coach. Very, very good head coach. And that's the thing. Now in the NFC North, I think you have 4 very solid head coaches between Kevin O'Connell, Dan Campbell, Matt LaFleur, and now Ben Johnson. We can hope Ben Johnson fits in with those other 3. All right, last fun little fact before we move on to college football. Well, we got to do our AFC and NFC conference championship picks. I just want to give you a fun little tidbit, a fun little fact. When you get to the parties this weekend, hopefully you're going to a party with your friends for these 2 games or your Super Bowl party in a couple weeks. Do you realize that Sean McVay, head coach of the Los Angeles Rams, who has had a lot of success here since he's taken over as the head man for the Rams, he has been in 13 playoff games. Very impressive. Very, very impressive. Here's the little trivia fact to stump your friends and your family. To tell them, fuck you, I'm smarter than you. Sean McVay has played in 13, or coached, he's coached in 13 playoff games. But the Rams in those 13 playoff games, they have never played the same team twice. How about that? How about that for an interesting fact? 13 playoff games, Sean McVay, as the Rams head coach, has never coached against the same team twice in his tenure. Very interesting. All right, so let's move on to our panel's picks for this upcoming weekend. We start off on Sunday, January the 26th, with our NFC Championship game. Mid-afternoon start for the Commanders as they go into Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Now, I'm going to be upfront about this. I don't care about these 4 teams very much at all. I have a preferred Super Bowl matchup. If you were to twist my arm behind my back and tell me you have to pick a game that you want to see above all others, any combination of these two teams out of these 4. And since I have done so bad in our picks this year, had a bad year in fantasy football. I've decided the football gods are completely and totally against me. So I actually am picking the worst possible matchup. Not what I want to see, because I figure it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be the game where I will actually not be all that. I'll watch it, but I will not be all that interested. But let me give you a little bit of breakdown on my picks for both games. So Commanders at Eagles. I've told you all the reasons I don't like Jayden Daniels. Not hate. No hate. He's an unbelievable talent. He's playing unbelievably well. And again, my reasons for not liking him are illogical. But I do think his streak continues here. His run, he is going to go down as the greatest rookie quarterback ever in the NFL. I am not saying he's going to win the Super Bowl, but I think he's going to get there. I don't like what I saw out of the Eagles last week against the Rams. Jalen Hurts is dinged up. I don't think he's 100% healthy. Going all the way back to the concussion situation from 4 or 5 weeks ago. A.J. Brown, petulant little baby, reading books on the sidelines. Dave thought that was cool. I thought that was asinine. Do you trust Nick Sirianni as a head coach in a situation like this? Now, some of you will go, do you trust Dan Quinn? I'll say, I'll trust Dan Quinn as long as he doesn't have a 25-point lead or a 28-point lead. Outside of that, I'll trust Dan Quinn. He's gotten his team to a Super Bowl, just like Sirianni did. Don't ignore Terry McLaurin. Don't ignore Zach Ertz. Yes, the Eagles have the home field advantage. The weather shouldn't be a factor here like it was for the Eagles against the Rams. In a very, very close game, probably a field goal game, much like the Buccaneers-Commanders game in the wild card round. I don't see Jayden Daniels. He's unflappable. And if this ends up being the week where we actually see the cracks, the chinks in the armor, and he shows some emotion in a negative way, then I might change my tune about him and say, hey, he's human. He's not a robot. Now I can relate. Now I can start to like him. But he's giving me no indication of anything other than the absolute coolest customer on the field in the room. So even though Philly is favored, last time I checked by about 6 points, I'm taking the Commanders. As I mentioned, 7 of our 8 panelists with their picks in. Dave and Nick are going with Philadelphia. Kind of shocked. 5 of our panel right now are with me, riding the Commanders bandwagon. So Kev, Sam, Bill, Doug, and Aaron all take Washington to upset the Eagles in Philadelphia. Then we move on to the nightcap. We knew we were going to have a great game once the Chiefs won. Thanks to the referees. Oh, gee, did I say that out loud? It was either going to be Ravens at Chiefs or Bills at Chiefs. Either way, great, great game. We get the Buffalo Bills, who beat the Chiefs earlier this year. Ravens lost to the Chiefs, but it was very, very close. Some would say by a toe. I'm on an island here, and I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this. Our panel overwhelmingly, despite the fact that right within the last couple hours, the point spread I saw Kansas City favored by 2 at home. I am the only panel member taking the Kansas City Chiefs. Dave, Sam, Bill, Nick, Doug, and Aaron all taking the Buffalo Bills, and I know the one pick that's not in, Mrs. C, will take the Bills. So I will definitely be on an island here with the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs. I can't believe it. I'm not shocked that there are a lot of the panel members taking the Bills. I'm blown away that everybody has been so soured on Kansas City. Is it because of the bad calls with the Texans game? Is it because of the fact that the Chiefs have just played these close games all year and they've been walking the high wire? So then you go, why are you taking them, Maestro? You're going against everything you've been saying. No, I'm not. Because I also, if you listen to me, as I talked about the Bills-Ravens game, said I was not impressed with the conservative Buffalo Bills offense. And this Kansas City Chiefs defense under Steve Spagnuolo is stout. It is mean. It is nasty. And I think they're going to be the difference in this game. I think the offenses cancel each other out, but the Bills' defense is not nearly as good as the Chiefs' defense. And I still worry about the fact that Josh Allen doesn't have enough weapons. Where's Amari Cooper? Where are these 2 great tight ends, Knox and Kincaid? Where are they? Woods has been spectacular, phenomenal running back. He's proved me wrong. I wasn't really high on him coming into this year. He proved me wrong. Josh Allen is solid as it gets at a quarterback, but I'm still not convinced do you want to talk about Hall of Fame? He ain't a Hall of Famer yet. I don't think he's even close. He's only incrementally better right now than somebody like a Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins seems to be that line in the sand. You cross that line, then we start talking about greatness. You fall below that line, you're not even mediocre. And I don't think Josh Allen has gotten beyond that line yet. I really don't. Even though he's had a little bit more success, a little tiny bit more success in the playoffs than Kirk Cousins. I did not like what I saw from the Bills' offense against the Baltimore Ravens, and as much as I hate Andy Reid, he's a better head coach than Sean McDermott. By far. I will take the Chiefs. Again, field goal game. Chiefs win by a field goal at home, setting up. This is where we go to my awful, terrible, least favorite Super Bowl matchup. I'm predicting the Commanders against the Chiefs. Ugh. Puke. Nobody wants to see that outside of Washington and Kansas City. I would prefer number 1 choice, Eagles-Bills. Number 2 choice, Eagles-Chiefs. I don't want the Commanders in there. I just don't. Why? Probably because if the legend of Jayden Daniels grows anymore, it's going to overwhelm Caleb Williams for my Bears. And I don't want that. I don't want to go through this again. With the quarterback and, oh, you could have taken this guy, or you could have taken that guy. It's revisionist bullshit history. Because number one, the Bears probably would have fucked up Jayden Daniels, especially with Matt Eberflus as head coach. That's how you got to look at it. You got to look at everything around the player, not just the player himself. All right, so one last time, let's recap. I'm taking Commanders and Chiefs. Dave's taking Eagles and Bills. Sam, Commanders, Bills. Bill, Commanders, Bills. Jen, her picks are pending. Of course, all picks will be posted Thursday night on our Facebook page. Nick, Eagles, Bills. Doug, Commanders, Bills. Aaron, Commanders, Bills. All right, so let's move on to college football and discuss the national championship game. This was a tough one for me. This was a tough game to watch. Not because it wasn't, in the end, fairly entertaining. Of course, as you'll know by now, Ohio State beat Notre Dame 34-23. The reason why it was tough for me to watch is because, well, it's multiple reasons, multiple levels here. Number one, all my friends are Notre Dame fans, which makes sense considering the Sports Frenzy studios are in close proximity to South Bend, Indiana. But I'm not a Notre Dame fan. And I get shit for it all the time because I graduated from Notre Dame. So everybody gives me every kind of grief imaginable. How do you not like Notre Dame if you graduated from Notre Dame? Because I grew up around here. I grew up around the Golden Dome. I don't like the fans. My friends excluded. My friends are reasonable football fans. Most Notre Dame fans are not. They're the worst type of fans out there. Now, I have not experienced Philadelphia Eagles fans or Raiders fans, so I'm sure there are worse fans out there. Alabama fans. But I also went to Miami. My freshman year, I went to the University of Miami. That's my team. I like the style of football they've played better over the years. They play more of a pro-style offense. I love Jimmy Johnson. I think he's the greatest head coach ever. So I have had to suffer for the last 20 years with a very mediocre team, while Notre Dame has, for the most part, fielded top 10 teams year in and year out. And that's fine. But that was my dilemma this past Monday night, January the 20th. My friends were rooting for Notre Dame, obviously. They wanted their first championship since 1988. How do I reconcile this? I want what's best for my friends, but at the same time, I could not root for Notre Dame, even against Ohio State. I have no love lost for Ohio State either. But I just knew I would be rooting for the Buckeyes. I just knew it. Because again, this is another Notre Dame team that just doesn't play football the way I like. Riley Leonard, let's run a quarterback draw for 5 yards up the middle 15 times a game. Now, he played better than I thought he would. He threw the ball better than I thought he would. And Ohio State basically took their great running back, Jeremiah Love, out of the game. And Jeremiah Love did not have a great run here, no pun intended, in the playoffs. Dominant running back in the regular season, didn't make much noise in the playoffs. That was more about the defense, run by, of course, former Miami Hurricanes head coach Al Golden, who now is talking to the Cincinnati Bengals about taking over their defense. See, Notre Dame's got to poach former Hurricanes coaches to make their team better. Had to say it. Had to say it. But it was all about, with Notre Dame, the defense and the running game. And it's the same old, stodgy, boring Notre Dame team, year in and year out. You never get a really dynamic offense. And I got to admit, Danny Parkins on FS1 Breakfast Ball with Craig Carton and Mark Schlereth, one of the two shows I watch every morning to get my sports fix in and get my knowledge and get some of my facts straight, had a great line about this game, in that he was rooting against Notre Dame, not because he liked Ohio State, but because he didn't want Marcus Freeman to win, the head coach at Notre Dame, because then he thought the Bears would immediately pounce on him as their new head coach. He wanted Marcus Freeman to lose so he had something, a goal left to achieve at Notre Dame. And of course, basically a day and a half later, we get the news about Ben Johnson, so it's all good. But anyway, those are my feelings about what I was thinking and where my heart was going into the game. Now, Notre Dame starts off the game with a monumental, grinded out, impressive, I believe, 18-play drive to start the game and go up 7-0. And I'm thinking, oh, shit. Oh, shit. If Ohio State's defense can't stop this typical Notre Dame smash mouth football, this is going to be a long, long night for me and for the Buckeyes. But then it turned out Ohio State was the better team. And like some people have pointed out, the best team in college that money could buy. As reports are, they have invested on this team $20 million roughly in nil money to get these players together for this run. And of course, people look at the loss to Michigan and go, oh, this would have never happened in a 4-team playoff. That Michigan loss would have knocked Ohio State out. Well, guess what? It's not 4 teams. It's 12 teams. So they made it in, and they crushed everybody on their way to winning a well-deserved title. And again, I don't give 2 rip shits about Ohio State. But they were the best team in college football at the end of the year. And Notre Dame was the second best. So it ended the way it should have. The 2 best teams faced off, and the best team won. And if you don't believe that, you weren't watching the playoffs like I was. These were the 2 best teams, and the best team won. I like Will Howard. He looks great. Great. At quarterback, I think Riley Leonard is going to be doomed to the typical Notre Dame quarterback scrap heap, which means he might be on a practice squad in the NFL for a year or 2 and then fade away to obscurity, a la Brady Quinn, Jimmy Clausen, Sam Hartman, and the like. But Ohio State deserved to win this game. So congratulations to the Buckeyes. Once again, winning the national championship in the first 12-team playoff format, 34-23 over Notre Dame. And what, by all accounts now, Ohio State is going to have 5-6 players drafted in the first round in the 2025 NFL draft. So, again, the best team money could buy in college football. And I have nothing to say. Miami spends a ton of money on their team, and look where they ended up. Miami ended up 18th in the final AP poll. So, big whoop-de-doo. Another mediocre year for the Miami Hurricanes. And of course, my prediction is that if Miami can't make it work this year, they got Carson Beck coming in. He won't be available for spring practice. But you got a big-time, big-name quarterback coming in the transfer portal. If Mario Cristobal, they can't get that defense fixed, and they can't keep that offense up to a high level like it was at with Cam Ward, Mario Cristobal's ass is going to be out. They're going to boot his ass out of Coral Gables. So he's on notice, at least as far as I'm concerned. And I got to believe Michael Irvin and Ray Lewis and all the UM alum who care so passionately about that program will be definitely chiming in along with me. Miami's got to get in the playoffs next season. They have got to make the 12-team playoff next season. Oh, and we might have a little bit to talk about in terms of some of the ancillary things going on around the college football championship at the end of the show, if you know what I mean. Steve Sarkisian, another guy who was flirting with the NFL. Now, I can't see Sark, at least right now, as an NFL head coach. I just can't. I think this is the right place for him at Texas. So good for him. He signs a new deal with the Longhorns. They tack on an extra year, and of course, more money involved. But I think he's settled in. I'm still not a big, huge fan of his, but he's fine for Texas right now. Texas works for him. He works for Texas. Now, the one final thing I do want to talk about before we move on to the sad state of baseball is overreaction. Panic mode. We live in a society with instant reaction. Ever since social media came aboard in our lives, the phones, the Facebook, the Instagrams, and the Twitter, and the X, and all that crap, and you see something you like or see something you don't like, you immediately send out an emoji or you send out a comment. Am I guilty of it? Once in a while, yes. Once in a while, yes. I usually don't do it with sports, though. Very rare for me to do it with sports. And I usually stay away from politics as well. Usually what I will do is if I ever post a comment, it will usually be because of the snowflakes out in Hollywood and something going on with Hollywood. Seems a little odd, but that's just me. And by the way, speaking of Hollywood and pop culture, don't forget to check out the Weekend Edition, your Saturday morning hangover cure, which drops this coming Saturday morning, January the 25th. Again, I will be solo, but it'll be fun. Very, very fun. I got some very cool stuff lined up. We're going to review Squid Game 2. I'm going to go back and review the first Den of Thieves movie, now that Den of Thieves 2 Pantera is a pretty decent, moderate hit at the box office right now. And then I'm going to go back in time for music. We haven't done story time in a while on the weekend edition. I'm going to go back in time and review what's considered the classic documentary about the tragic Rolling Stones Altamont concert, Gimme Shelter. This is what happens when you don't have a lot of new albums and songs to review. So don't forget to check out the weekend edition with me, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. We'll get you through your Friday night disappointment, which, of course, inevitably led to your Saturday morning hangover. And, of course, you can find not only the sports edition, which we're doing right now, but the weekend edition. You found us somewhere, but you have options and choices. We are on Spotify, Good Pods, Pocket Casts, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. And as I already mentioned, check out the Facebook page Thursday night. We're almost done with football picks for the year, but all 8 of our panelist picks will be out Thursday night for the NFL championship games, AFC and NFC. And coming up very soon, mid-February, we will start up with our NASCAR picks every weekend. Starting with, of course, the greatest race in the world, the Daytona 500. Now, that was a necessary tangent. That was a business-related tangent, not one of my famous rants, ravings that went off the rails. The one last thing I want to discuss in college football before we move on is the reactionary nature of everything. We have had 1 year, one stinking year of the 12-team playoff system, and already every talking head out there, we got to fix this, we got to change this, we got to tweak this. Stop it. And every sports league does this now, and it drives me insane. Let it breathe. Give us at least 2 more years of the format the way it is right now. I know the SEC and the Big Ten, they want to take over the whole thing. And they're probably bitching and pissing and moaning and complaining behind closed doors about SMU and Boise State and Arizona State. You don't get to dictate who makes the playoffs. And I still don't like the fact that there's a panel involved. I still wish it would come down to a larger group of voters like the AP to decide the top 12 teams who should or should not make the playoffs. And I still don't see the problem with awarding conference champions a bye. What is the problem with that? Again, it doesn't work for the Big Ten and the SEC. Because those 2 conferences, all they want is all 12 teams to be from their 2 conferences. They are going to destroy college sports, college football in particular. Their power needs to be reined in. And this is really, again, I will say this again, Dave agrees with me, this is really why I wish the Mountain West and the Pac-12 would have merged and given us, again, a Power 5 situation. Because right now we've got a Power 4 where 2 of the 4, the Big 12 and the ACC, don't have a hell of a lot of power. Which is wrong. And trust me, I live in Big Ten country, and I'm getting sick of this bullshit. Where they've now decided we're gonna strengthen ourselves and go out and grab USC and UCLA, and we're gonna go toe to toe with the SEC. And now all of a sudden it's, well, why don't the two of us work together to crush everybody else and make sure we're the only schools fighting it out for the championship? What a ridiculously pathetic business model. Competition is healthy. Monopolies do not make anything better. And what the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to do is basically create a football monopoly. Where does this come from? Why am I bringing this up? Specifically, because I heard that the ACC is already trying to tweak their conference champion and the conference championship game to figure out a way to make it so that they're guaranteed at least one, if not two slots in this 12-team playoff as they fight against the SEC and the Big Ten. But I think the ideas they're putting out there are absolutely stupid. And what they're going to do is they're going to exclude themselves from the playoff if they go forward with some of these ridiculous ideas. The most egregious idea, which is the one they seem to think is the smartest, is where they want to say, okay, regular season champion, best record, great. They don't play in the conference championship game. The second and the third best teams play in the conference championship game. You're weakening your cause on two different fronts. And again, the Big Ten and the SEC and the committee, which they are going to control here very soon, they're going to laugh at you and say, so you've got a champion of the regular season who didn't play a championship game. Then you're trying to sell us on your conference champion who did play in a championship game but didn't win the regular season. The ACC won't get a single team in the 12-team playoff format if they start going down that road. That's just me. That's how I am seeing this. But football, we're done with football for this week. Let's start to wind things down a little bit. We'll hit baseball here and NASCAR. Of course, NASCAR will start ramping up next month once we get to the Clash and the Daytona 500. But I do have a few minutes where I need to blow my fucking top about Major League Baseball. All right, so we move on to baseball. And I will admit, I have become increasingly ridiculously bitter about baseball over the last couple years. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know this. And it's not just because I'm a Cubs fan. Now, Dave has got a lot of reasons to be bitter since he's a White Sox fan. His team just posted arguably the worst season in Major League Baseball history. But the problem is we're trying to look at the big picture. I think we would be better. Dave and I, we would feel better about the failures of our teams if the sport as a whole was healthy. When we rip on the Bears, for example, we know that the problems with the Bears, that's all on them. That's ownership, that's the front office, that's the players. Because the NFL is king when it comes to attendance and ratings and everything. Because it's a level playing field. Financially, skill-wise, a team can come from the bottom of the barrel to the top of the heap in just a few short years if they make the right changes, draft the right players, and sign the right free agents. That's not the case anymore in baseball. Baseball has literally destroyed itself. The luxury tax does not work anymore. It's stupid. Case in point, the LA Dodgers yet again. Yet again, I have to bring up the Dodgers, the reigning, defending World Series champions, as they sign more top-level players while the rest of the league sits on their hands and just concedes the entire season. This season, next season, and the season after to the Dodgers. We knew they were going to get Roki Sasaki. We knew they were going to. Most of the players from overseas, Japan, Korea, they will stay on the West Coast. It's closer to home. There's a bigger fan base that knows them, that appreciates them, that roots for them. The whole thing that bothers me with the Sasaki deal is that it's $7 million for a kid of this talent. So you're basically letting the Dodgers, who will go out and buy anybody they want at whatever price they deem necessary, get a bargain here with Sasaki. Oh, but they weren't done this week. Then they go out and get arguably the best relief pitcher on the market with Tanner Scott. And they give him a 4-year, $72 million deal. Of course, over $20 million of it is deferred. I think I heard last night, again, taping this on the 22nd of January, that they are closing in, or they have blown past, they are in the neighborhood of $1.3 billion in deferred salaries right now. That is not fair. That is not right. I understand why these players would not want to pay California tax. Believe me, I get that. And I also know that baseball is still assessing the Dodgers for the full amount year by year of what these players are supposed to get, roughly, approximately. So Shohei Ohtani is not counting $2 million or $3 million against the luxury tax for the Dodgers. He is counting full bore. But this is why the Dodgers payroll is now over $375 million this year. Oh, by the way, did I mention they're negotiating with another top-level receiver, Kirby Yates? They want to bring him in as well. So just, you guys know this. I know. We're not stupid. But keep that number in mind, $375 million. There are teams in Major League Baseball right now that aren't even at $75 million for their payroll. Yes, that's right. The Dodgers are $300 million more than some teams in the league right now. This needs to end. And of course, Rob Manfred, the piece of shit commissioner that he is. Oh, but I'm the guy that got the pitch clock in there. Great, Rob. Way to go. Fiddle while your empire burns. Because that's what you're doing. You need to get with these other owners, and you need to tell them right now, we are going to destroy this whole system. We are going to tear it all down. We're going to set a hard cap and a hard floor. And we're going to get the players' union on board. And I know I've put this out there before, so has Dave. Because if we make the lower tier teams, the bottom feeders, jump up their payroll to 100, 120, 130 million. Meanwhile, you cap the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets at, let's say, 250. The game becomes better. And for the most part, the players get paid more. Oh, the Dodgers don't get to spend $375 million. Yeah, but you're forcing the Pirates and the Reds and the Marlins and the Rays, the White Sox, the A's. Everybody's got to spend more on the bottom end. And that will more than offset what you're supposedly, quote-unquote, losing by actually making the Dodgers and the Yankees have to be competitive and smart with the rest of the league. It's not rocket science, people. This is why the NFL is so successful. Why can't the NBA and Major League Baseball just follow that model? Again, it's not hard. But for Adam Silver and Rob Manfred, it's just astronomically complicated and ridiculous. It's like physics and calculus all wrapped up and tied up into one. They can't handle it. They can't figure out how to make their sport more viable and healthier. And by the way, screw the fucking Dodgers. They are now destroying baseball. Yeah, all you LA fans, ha 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 ha, laugh and laugh and laugh. Your time will come. There will be a reckoning. And maybe it won't be because you don't win anymore, but it's going to be because nobody cares and nobody watches baseball anymore and nobody goes to the games outside of New York and LA anymore because of the shit you're pulling. So congratulations, LA. You've destroyed baseball. Now, in other signing news, the A's are actually trying to build up a decent roster. I know it's partially because they're in transition heading towards Las Vegas eventually, so they want to have a decent team in place when they get there. So they have signed Japanese high school player, kind of working around the system here. They have signed a high school player, Shitaro Mori. And it only cost him $1.5 million. And he's a two-way player. He's a pitcher and he's a shortstop. So maybe the A's have figured out a way with international players to get around some loopholes here to maybe beat the Dodgers at their own game. They also signed relief pitcher Jose Leclerc to a one-year, $10 million deal. As I sit here as a Cubs fan and go, how about the Cubs signing some relief pitchers? Because we still don't have a closer and we still don't have a third baseman. But I digress. Oh, wait. The Mets signed relief pitcher A.J. Minter for 2 years and $22 million. Again, I love how the Cubs are just letting this all, life is passing them by. Ricketts is so happy because he's saving money. The fucking idiot. This is, as Dave would say, the Tribune Company all over again. Ricketts fooled every Cubs fan out there. Yes, we got a title. We got World Series credentials now. But wouldn't it be nice to have ownership who actually wanted to have sustained excellence and not just a one and done mentality? Wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know what that's like because I'm a Cubs fan. Oh, and speaking of which, yes, I know we had a glut of outfielders, but we traded Cody Bellinger. But Anthony Santander, big-time slugger from the Baltimore Orioles, 40-plus home runs last year. Yes, I know he's got a terrible on-base percentage. Not a great fielder, but still. When was the last time the Cubs had a guy who could jack 40 home runs out of the park? Chris Bryant? Look what's become of him. One of the few smart moves the Cubs have made, letting him go. Could have had Kyle Schwarber. That was a dumb move, letting Schwarber go. This team has no pop, no power in their lineup whatsoever. We'll get to Kyle Tucker in a second. So instead of being progressive in their thinking ahead of the curve, thinking let's get Santander and then maybe let's deal Suzuki or let's deal Happ. Oh God, not Ian Happ, not the cherished golden child, Ian Happ. Oh my God, what is the fucking obsession with Ian Happ? I can't stand Ian Happ. He is the most mediocre piece of shit player in the entire league who's getting $20 million a year. By the way, Santander signed with the Toronto Blue Jays 5 years, $92.5 million. Do the math, kids. He's getting paid per year less than the great and the glorious Ian fucking Happ. If Ian Happ's so great, put him on the market and see what you can get for him. The guy is so vastly overrated, it's ridiculous. Get the Cubs they'll still talk about trading Nico Hoerner, who I do not want the Cubs to let Nico go in any way, shape, or form. But they'll shop Nico Hoerner, but you can't touch Ian Happ. Fuck Ian Happ. Oh my God. I literally don't know if I've ever hated a Cubs player more than I hate Ian Happ. And not because of anything he's really done in terms of off-field behavior or Jason Hayward is close. Jason Hayward is really damn close. Jason Hayward still might be number one. Because we're still paying that underachieving piece of shit. Somehow. Talking about deferred money. But the fact that the Cubs, they're playing games with their fans. Now we'll get to Kyle Tucker. So Kyle Tucker and the Cubs finally came to an agreement because he was eligible his last year of arbitration. Kyle Tucker and the Cubs agreed on a $16.5 million contract for 2025, which is fine. You know, it was gonna end up happening. They were gonna meet in the middle, so that's good. But I still don't understand the trade. The more I've thought about it, the more I don't understand this trade. When again, you could have had Santander for less than $20 million a year. So now you open up a huge fucking hole at third base by trading Isaac Paredes, who you barely had for half a season, the second time the Cubs have shipped that poor guy out. So now the Astros have a third baseman to replace Alec Bregman, who's going to leave in free agency, and watch, he'll end up with the Cubs on a one-year deal. And of course, his agent is the devil, Scott Boras. So it'll be a one-year deal or a multi-year deal with an opt-out, which we just went through with Cody Bellinger. The more I think about this, the more I wish they'd never done the deal. Because you could have had Santander as your DH. And you still could have had Suzuki and Pete Crow Armstrong and Ian Happ in the outfield. I know defensively it's not great. Suzuki's not great. But the other two are top-notch fielders. And then you could have had a DH who has 40 home run a year potential. God, I can't stand the way my team thinks when it comes to this roster. Considering what happened. Oh, that was the excuse last year, right? The wind didn't blow out enough for us. Isn't that what Jed Hoyer said? Idiot. That's a lame, pathetic excuse for your shortcomings and your GM's shortcomings. Now you're stuck. You either have to re-sign Kyle Tucker to a massive deal after this season if he actually can produce, or you're going to look even dumber letting him be a one-year rental when you had Paredes locked up for multiple years at third base at a much lower salary, by the way. Well, Sammy Sosa and the Cubs have made peace. Sammy Sosa, along with the great Derek Lee, have both been elected to the Cubs Hall of Fame. And I'm very happy for both of them because both of them deserve it. Yes, Sosa has a tainted past, which will keep him out of the Baseball Hall of Fame until they decide that the steroid era guys should be allowed in. Oh, speaking of the big time Hall of Fame, as we got the Cubs Hall of Fame, Sosa and Lee, the big normal Cooperstown Hall of Fame, we have 3 new inductees to Cooperstown. And I've got issues. Of course I do, right? Of course the Maestro has issues. I don't have an issue with Ichiro getting in. Ichiro Suzuki, how could you? One of the greatest pure hitters of all time. He's right there with Tony Gwynn, Rod Carew, George Brett, Pete Rose. Those could be your top 5 all time right there. My problem is the writers who vote on this. What a group of nasty assholes these guys are. We can't let anybody be unanimous. And the problem is they started this bullshit decades and decades ago. Because they didn't again, let anybody be unanimous. Nobody got in unanimously. Some of the greatest players of all time never got in unanimously. One person has gotten in unanimously, and that's bullshit. And even though he is a deserved first ballot Hall of Famer, Mariano Rivera should not be the only person who's ever gotten in the Baseball Hall of Fame unanimously. That's garbage. That's absolute garbage. That's a travesty. And then we've got the whole issue with attitude. Some guys can have a shitty attitude and they love them. and some guys can have a shitty attitude and they exclude them. Now, my problem with Ichiro, wrapping him up, deserved. Fantastic. I am happy he's in first time around. My problem is the one guy, the one scumbag who did not vote him in. Because we got to get over this unanimous stuff. We got to start putting more and more of these guys in. There should be probably 30 or 40 guys, if not more, unanimously voted into the Hall of Fame. And we've got one. Because of the pettiness of these scumbag writers. So I want to know who the one person is who did not vote for Ichiro to get into the Hall of Fame. And a lot of people speculate it's probably the same jackwagon who didn't vote for Derek Jeter to get into the Hall of Fame because he fell one vote short as well. Now, I'm not a big Derek Jeter fan. Okay? Don't get me wrong. But again, there are dozens of players who should be in without a doubt. And if you didn't vote for them, there's something wrong with you. Now, we move on to CC Sabathia. And this will be more along the lines, the argument of what I was just putting out there. Curt Schilling can't get in the Hall of Fame because of his politics. Albert Bell can't get in the Hall of Fame because of the way he treated the reporters. But CC Sabathia, who is one of the most disgusting individuals of all time, he sees a microphone, he's got to say the word fuck. And yes, I know, we curse on this show. But I would like to think we are extremely literate and extremely intelligent, and on occasion drop an F-bomb. CC Sabathia is such a piece of gutter trash that all he does is say, fuck this, fuck that, fuck this, fuck that. But, oh my God, we got to put him in the Hall of Fame on the very first ballot. I wonder if him being a former Yankee has anything to do with that. Now, am I gonna argue about CC Sabathia getting in purely based on his statistics? No. But I will say I have doubts about him being a first ballot, first year in Hall of Famer. I don't think his numbers are that impressive. But he's in. That's fine. For his play, for his pitching on the field. But he is an absolute immature, ignorant piece of scum off the field. He is not a role model. He is a foul-mouthed idiot. But he gets in. Curt Schilling and Albert Bell don't. Because of the way they treated the poor reporters, or because their politics weren't left enough for the poor sports writers. And then third, among the three members, the new members of the Baseball Hall of Fame, is Billy Wagner. Now, if you're not catching the theme here of these three guys, let me explain it to you. All three have solid New York ties. Ichiro played for the Yankees. CC Sabathia played for the Yankees. Billy Wagner played for the Mets. So we've got to kiss New York's ass once again. Kiss New York's ass, kiss LA's ass. That's all baseball does. It's like politics. Flyover country doesn't matter to them. And Billy Wagner, again, I am fine with Ichiro. I am fine with Sabathia. I can actually be mature enough to say Sabathia can be in on his numbers, even though he's a scumbag in real life. But Billy Wagner, can we stop? It's like punters in the NFL. Ray Guy is in when it comes to football and their Hall of Fame. That's good enough. What is it with closers? Especially, I'm sorry, mediocre closers like Billy Wagner, a compiler. Billy Wagner isn't even one of the 10 greatest closers of all time. He's a compiler. Yet, he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. And of course, with the stupid voting system they've got, it was his last year of eligibility. We had to put him in. No, you didn't. Let the Veterans Committee put him in. I mean, look, Dick Allen and Dave Parker are getting in because of the Veterans Committee. Both of those players are 10 times more worthy than Billy Wagner to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But again, New York. Oh, he pitched for the Mets. Gotta put him in. Baseball just sickens me. And I would be shocked. I know, we've talked about this. Dave and I have said this on the weekend edition and on the sports edition for months and years. Everything all of a sudden is getting record ratings. Don't be surprised if the lies actually fall apart and we find out this year that baseball ratings plummet and they tank because they've decided to let the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Yankees do whatever they want. And the other 27 teams be damned. All right, let's move on to NASCAR. Just a couple minutes here. We're still a few weeks away from Daytona when we will really start ramping up our coverage of NASCAR. Next week, your Uncle Dave coming back, I will give him one of his 2 annual homework assignments for NASCAR. He will have to explain to you, I'm not doing it, he will have to explain to you the format for the upcoming clash at Bowman Gray Stadium. The rest of the stuff, If you have Tubi, the NASCAR channel will debut on Tubi on January the 29th. They call this a FAST channel, the kids do. Of course, FAST stands for free ad-supported television. The only reason you might want to check in is I think Shannon's Bake has a daily show. Yummy. I love her. And here's a fashion tip for you women out there. Shannon's Bake, you know what she does that really turns me on? She doesn't gloss up her lips with all this red, ruby red, cherry red shit. She uses pale lipstick. Much sexier. Much, much sexier. Because, of course, you need me to tell you how to sex things up. JR Motorsports, yes, that is Dale Earnhardt Jr. They are going to have their first ever Cup Series entry. Now, they've been doing a lot of stuff in the lower levels, Xfinity Series, of course. But Justin Allgaier will run for JR Motorsports in the Daytona 500. And I will say this. That's a sleeper pick. These super speedway races are chaotic and crapshoots to begin with. Dale Earnhardt Jr. knew how to run super speedways. I could see Justin Allgaier having a great race at Daytona. So again, JR Motorsports, the first ever Cup Series entry for Daytona with Justin Allgaier. And you can say the same for the Tricon Garage, as they are going to put Martin Truex Jr. out there. Former Cup Series champion, of course, retired from full-time racing in 2024. But Martin Truex Jr. said he did want to run Daytona. Now Tricon, I believe, has got a partnership with Joe Gibbs Racing. But we will have Martin Truex Jr. most likely in the Daytona 500 as well. And then on the business front, MBM rebranding itself as Garage 66. So there you go. There's your NASCAR update for the week. Now, personally, if I was rebranding myself, why wouldn't I just say Garage 69? Hey, ho, hey, ho. Basketball. We had the Thunder and the Cavs, Part 2, about a week ago. And, of course, what happens in the ultra-boring NBA? Cavs won the first game. The Thunder came back at home, won the second game, 134-114. So, nothing was proven. You're still dealing with the two best teams by far. Thunder in the West, Cavs in the East. And I can tell you this, my team, the Orlando Magic, not one of the best teams in the East right now. They are falling apart, and this is very, very troublesome. You can say the injuries have caught up with them, but the Magic now stand at 23-22. They have dropped to 8th in the Eastern Conference. The really troubling part of this, though, Paolo Banchero, their number one player, comes back from injury. They are 1-5. Yes, 1-5 since Banchero has come back. And you still don't have Mo Wagner, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs. They're all still out. Now, Mo Wagner's not coming back. Franz Wagner's supposed to be back at some point in the near future. So is Jalen Suggs. But the Magic are just having a terrible time acclimating with all these different lineups and who's healthy, who's not, who can play, who can't. But that is just unbelievably troubling that you get your best player back and you go 1-5 out of the gate. When he comes back, something's wrong with the team. Something is really wrong with the chemistry of this team. College basketball. Auburn is your unanimous number one team on the men's side in the AP poll. The teams that we follow, Notre Dame, not doing great. They are 8-10. Miami is in an absolute free fall since Jim Larinaga left. The Hurricanes are 4-14 as we tape this podcast. I do want to point out an interesting little stat from about a week ago. Back on January the 15th, which would have been last Wednesday when we were doing our last episode. UMass and Fordham played a very, very intriguing game. 3 overtimes, including 122 free throw attempts. Granted, again, this was 3 overtimes, but that is the most in Division I since 1996-97. Felt that needed a little bit of a shout out there. And this would be a good time for me to bring up my Clint Eastwood Badass of the Week. I guess I should say badasses because I'm going to talk about the Iowa State women's basketball team. I don't normally tend to give praise, heap praise on a team or an individual who have just failed. But I will in this case. Last week, the Iowa State women had their 3-point streak end. Now, when I say their 3-point streak, all they had to do was hit 1 3-pointer in every game. Might sound easy, but you'd be shocked. This happened back on January the 14th. This 3-point streak ended where they hit 1 3-pointer, at least one in every game, goes back 945 games. That's right, 945 games. And that streak finally came to an end on January the 14th. But kudos to the Iowa State women for a remarkable 3-point streak. Hockey. Dave's not here, but I have to point out his Blackhawks are 15-28-4, 34 points, tied for dead last in the league. Seems like we do this every year. Tied for last in the league with the San Jose Sharks. Now the Sharks have played a few more games than the Blackhawks, which might actually give the Blackhawks the edge to not being the worst team in the league again. But the pattern that's disturbing me here is that the Blackhawks and the Sharks have been the 2 worst teams in the league, it seems like, for the last couple years, right? I'm not going crazy. And they're drafting extremely high in the NHL draft. They're getting these young phenom players, Connor Bedard. I know the Sharks just got some stud kid last draft. Why isn't this working out for these teams? The bad teams just keep staying bad. Let's get it going, guys. Let's get a better front office. Let's get some better coaches. Let's do something. This is not how the system is supposed to work. You're getting the best young players, and you're doing nothing with them. Now, last night, I believe it was last night, again, taping on the 22nd. So I believe last night on the 21st, we had in the Oilers-Capitals game a serving of nachos thrown on the ice that distracted the goalie, I believe the Capitals goalie. Now, the Capitals end up winning the game, so in that way, it's no harm, no foul. But a fan throws over the barrier a serving of nachos. There's pictures of it out there on the internet. And it didn't even splatter. It just kind of, boom, fell like it perfectly should have. But it distracted the goalie. And no penalty that I've seen. No penalty, no stoppage of play. And I didn't hear of anything in terms of that fan getting kicked out of the arena. What the hell? And then, finally, I'm going to tie in the hockey stuff with the NFL. This is what we used to call Frenzy 5-0, our crime blotter, where we'd look at criminal activity and how it affected sports. The Penguins' Evgeny Malkin was the latest victim of a crime ring that has been targeting professional athletes when they are out of town, because of course we all know what the schedules are for these players. He had 3 Stanley Cup rings taken in this particular burglary. Now, tying into this, and I don't know if this is the same group or not, but we have finally, it took long enough. I love the police, I love law enforcement, but man, this kind of stuff and how long it took to break this case, I have doubts. Remember, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals was one of these high-profile athletes victimized by this crime ring. Well, 4 Chilean illegal immigrants were arrested this past week in Ohio. Again, 4 illegal Chilean immigrants. Thanks, Joe Biden. Thanks, Brandon. Arrested in Ohio. Now, preliminary investigations say that these guys have actually been traveling all around the country, so this could be the start of breaking up this entire burglary ring. But these 4 guys had Joe Burrow merchandise, things from his house, in the trunk of the car. So that's how they were at least able to directly tie these 4 gentlemen into the Joe Burrow burglary. But this could be the proverbial tip of the iceberg, where we could find out a lot more about this crime ring and put this stuff to an end. All right, miscellaneous sports news. NBC has announced that Mike Tirico will indeed, this is kind of a no-brainer, could see this coming a mile away, Mike Tirico will take over when NBC gets NBA basketball back. Mike Tirico will be their play-by-play announcer starting in the 2025-2026 season. Again, a no-brainer. Tirico is solid. Can't do much better than that. Live Golf. We talked about this a few weeks back. The rumors were out there. Now it is official. Fox Sports will now be carrying the Live Golf Tour, a multi-year media rights agreement between Fox Sports and Live Golf. So do not write Live Golf off yet, kids. Speaking of golf, because of the LA wildfires still having issues out there, and again, we joke about Hollywood, we joke about California falling off into the ocean, but we do actually hope for the best for everybody out there in California who has been affected by the wildfires. The PGA Tour is moving the Genesis Invitational. They're moving it out from the Riviera Country Club where it is normally played. Do not have word yet on where they're going to play that. And if you remember, the Genesis Invitational, that's the tournament where we saw the latest bout of issues years ago with Tiger Woods. That's the one where he drove his vehicle off the road, got injured, didn't want anybody searching the vehicle or his backpack. Now, it's been quite a few years, but that was, I do believe, the Genesis Invitational, because that's Tiger's tournament. Once we find out where they're moving it to, we'll let you know. And then finally, next week, we will have our recap of the Australian Open for you. They're into the semifinal round right now as we record this on the 22nd of January. And in my humble opinion, the greatest tennis player of all time, Novak Djokovic, he is in the semifinals. He beat Carlos Alcaraz. Impressive beyond belief, considering how much younger Alcaraz is than him. Keep in mind, Novak Djokovic is 37 years old. And he is now in the semifinals of the Australian Open. All right, moments of silence. Of course, we have to acknowledge the passing of the great Bob Uecker, a legend for all Milwaukee Brewer fans. He's a legend for all baseball fans, okay? His great performance in Major League, all the light beer commercials when they were good, back when they featured all the professional athletes and the commentators and the pop culture icons. We'll never get that era back. I'm sorry to be cynical. Bob Uecker represents an era that will never, ever, ever come back again. And for that and that alone, we pay the ultimate tribute to Bob Uecker, one of the all-time legends in baseball. Thoughts and prayers to the Brewers, all their fans, and of course, friends and family of Bob Uecker. Gus Williams. Gus Williams, a legend in the lore of the Seattle Supersonics. Of course, that team no longer exists. They are now the OKC Thunder. Now, there has been rumors, speculation for years and years about how the NBA wants to bring basketball back to Seattle. I would be shocked if they didn't just make it the Supersonics again, kind of do the same thing they did with the Cleveland Browns in the NFL. But Gus Williams, I do believe, was on the one and only championship winning team for Seattle. And then in racing, the patriarch of the Truex family, Martin Truex Sr., passed away here over the last week. Of course, we just talked about Martin Truex Jr. as he's just retiring from full-time racing. You've got Ryan Truex still out there. But Martin Truex Sr. has passed away. And so, we will move on, as we always do in every episode, from the pits of grief and despair in moments of silence to the depths of idiocy and stupidity with our nominees for the Red Foreman Dumbasses of the Week. Now, I'm going to need your help without Dave here. You guys are going to have to step up, drop us a comment on our Facebook page or on our Spotify page, and let us know who you think the dumbass of the week should be. Now, I'm going to say something before we start. I've rarely done this. Rarely done this. I took somebody out at the last minute. You all know I don't like Kirk Herbstreit at all. I think he's a snowflake. I do. I don't like the stuff he pulled with his dog. Oh, he gets to play by different rules than everybody else. He gets to bring his dog into the broadcast booth all over the place with him. But I guarantee you nobody else gets that. Yes, I felt bad for the dog. The dog was dying. But then he does the same thing with the replacement dog. To me, it's entitlement. It's snowflake arrogance. But I was getting ready to put him in as one of the nominees for the Dumbass of the Week because of his crying after Ohio State won the national championship and his unbelievably pathetic comments about how he's so impartial anytime he calls an Ohio State game. But you always have to take other factors into account. Now, I still don't like the fact that he puts his personal life out there for all of us to go, oh, poor Kirk, we should feel so bad for him. It's a Bush League move. But I will take him out of the running this week because he happened to say he's gone through a lot more rough stuff than we know about, including his wife suffering from breast cancer, and there's illness issues with, I believe, one of his children. He should not be sharing that with us. I still have a problem with it. It still seems like a little bit of showboating. But if all that is true, and I have no reason to believe it's not, I cannot rip him for getting emotional. He is definitely, if that's all true, going through a hell of a lot of stuff. So I will lay off. I will give Kirk Herbstreit a Red Foreman dumbass buffer zone for right now. And I will exempt him from being a nominee for the time being. But that doesn't mean we're not going to rip on the network that he works for. Not once, but twice. For stupid, dumbass moves during the week. Once, including the national championship broadcast. Now, did you guys happen to notice? It was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. A lot of things going on this past Monday. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the inauguration for the president, and then the national championship game. But it's obvious that ESPN has a bunch of stupid, lazy snowflakes working for them. There is nothing that upsets me more than people who do not double-check their work. It's lazy and it's inconsiderate. And it can be extremely embarrassing. The daughter of Martin Luther King comes out to the middle of the field for the coin toss in the national championship game, and I had to rewind this to double check to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. They did not include the I in Martin Luther King Jr. MARTN was what the caption said underneath his daughter's description as she was coming out to the coin toss. MARTN. Double check your goddamn work. Nothing drives me crazier than this. So that, once again, will put ESPN at the forefront in contention for the Red Foreman Dumbass of the Week. But we're not done with ESPN. Now, this one doesn't have anything to do with the national championship game coverage, but you'll recall last week I ripped ESPN for making one of their headlines on the front page of their website. The whole deal about Naomi Osaka acting like it was such a brave, tragic ordeal that she had to call somebody to risk their life to go into her house, which was in peril from the wildfires, to get her daughter's birth certificate, which is one of the easiest documents to get replaced. Well, ESPN decided, let's just stick with the stupid tennis story theme. But instead of Naomi Osaka, who, by the way, bailed out of the Australian Open, I'm hurt, I can't play anymore, I'm hurt. If Kirk Herbstreit and Naomi Osaka ever met, it would be like snowflake, matter and antimatter, and the world would implode. But this time it was Coco Gauff. And no, ESPN wasn't going to put a headline out there about how she's doing at the Aussie Open. Coco Gauff tweeting or posting RIP TikTok USA ends up being a top-level headline story on ESPN's website. What the flying fuck do we care about Coco Gauff and her reaction to TikTok almost getting shut down? How the fuck is that a sports story? And why the fuck should we care, ESPN? My God, who is running that network? So they're dumbasses times two already. But now, not to be outdone, the mayor of Philadelphia, and you guys have probably seen this by now. If I had been able to record this podcast on Monday, I could have beaten almost everybody to this. But now all the major sports networks and pundits have caught on to this. Philadelphia Mayor Sherelle Parker. And again, makes you wonder, what the hell are we thinking voting some of these people into office? Trying to lead a chant for the Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles. And there's video out there. You can verify this. She's leading a chant, and they're spelling out Eagles, and she goes, E-L-G-S-E-S. Yes, that is how the mayor of one of the biggest cities in the United States spelled Eagles. E-L-G-S-E-S. Dumbass. The NBA. Oh, they're not desperate. Everything's going swimmingly. Everything's going great for the NBA. So why do you have to resort to a stupid-ass stunt like this? Now, I don't care anymore about any all-star game. Baseball, football, basketball, hockey, I don't care. NASCAR. But how desperate and pathetic are you? You already let people vote multiple times. You can vote once a day, right? Now, I will admit, with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I will take advantage of this, even though it's stupid beyond belief. Yes, I'm admitting I'm stupid, because I think my vote actually matters, and I will vote every day for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, even though my vote, everybody's collective vote, the fan vote, only counts for 1%, or one vote, whatever that might end up being. But January the 17th, and how does this have any logical say in who should be an NBA All-Star? On January the 17th, the NBA announced, if you vote today, on the 17th, your vote counts triple. What the fuck is that? Seriously, I know it's not like a political election, but can you imagine? Can you imagine if you vote early, if you vote on October the 22nd, we'll give you 3 votes for the presidency instead of just 1. No integrity. No integrity. The NBA, again, you prove to be a bunch of dumbasses. Now, I alluded to this earlier when I was talking about the Bears' hire of Ben Johnson as head coach. And I was a little troubled by the fact that he seems like he's going to be a coddler when it comes to the players. Well, I'll tell you who's a big-time coddler, and this is a coach I like. But I don't know how far he's going to be able to take the Houston Texans if he's going to kiss the players' asses like this. And that is one DeMeco Ryans. So if you did not see it, again, Google it, go out on YouTube. Texans cornerback, Chris Boyd. He's the first dumbass here. Makes an awful, awful play early in the game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And then when his special teams coach, Frank Ross, comes over to rightfully give him shit about it, he shoves Frank Ross. Both hands, loaded up, pushed him. If you had any balls as a team, as an organization, you take him, you walk him back to the locker room, you say, pack your shit up, you're done. You just shoved your coach, your positional coach. You need to go away and never show your face around here again. You are cut, you are done, you are out. But no. No, the coddler, the snowflake that DeMeco Ryans, the head coach, is, says, oh, his shove was not disrespectful. And then we get all this crap about heat of the moment. You know, he was all fired up even though he had made a huge mistake. And his coach was obviously coming out to give him shit about it. If I was Frank Ross and I saw the reaction from my head coach and the organization, I would tender my resignation immediately and say, you people go fuck off. If this is how you're going to back me up and you're going to let the inmates run the asylum, I don't want any piece of this. I'm done. I'll go work somewhere else where the lunatics don't get to tell the higher-ups how things are. The coddling, the brainwashing, DeMeco Ryans lost a lot of respect for you this past weekend. A lot. And then finally, somebody else who I have no respect for. I can't say I lost more respect for him because I had none to begin with. Dan Hurley. Of course, Dan Hurley, yes, the two-time defending national champion, head basketball coach of the UConn Huskies men's team. And I've said this on the podcast in the past. This guy's got problems. He has got issues. And he is going to kill somebody. He's either going to kill somebody or we're going to find out some really nasty, awful stuff about him. Something is wrong with him. And I am not kidding you. I am not overstating this. This man is a psychopath. So now his latest little stunt, as every game he's got to scream and yell at the referees. Scream and yell at them. Now he sinks, again, there's no water left to drain out of this tub when it comes to me and what respect I have for him. I have none. But now he's yelling at the coach, the referees on the floor saying, "Don't you walk away from me." That part I'm paraphrasing. This part's a direct quote. "I'm the best coach in the fucking sport." And then in the press conference after the game, when a reporter calls him out on it, he kind of just sits there and smirks and goes, yeah, I said that. Yeah, I did." Daring anybody to doubt him. And then he goes on to say, "Why don't the cameras focus on the other coach? Why are they always on me?" Now, he did say, "I'm not the victim." I'll give him a little teeny tiny bit of credit for saying, "I'm not the victim. I created this." But I'm telling you, he needs to get his ass beat. He is a pampered, entitled little bully. He was probably bullied in school, and he didn't learn from it. He didn't beat the bully up and become a better person. He decided to follow in the footsteps of the bully and become one himself. So somebody needs to put him in his place. I'd be more than happy to. I'll take him on. Put on some gloves. Let's go in a ring right now, Hurley. You tough guy. You big tough guy. And I'm telling you, if somebody doesn't stop this, this man is borderline sociopathic. And he is going to, down the road, do damage to somebody. Whether it's a student, an athlete, a family member, he's sick. He is sick and needs to be stopped. And I can't believe UConn puts up with this. I'm sorry, I do have one more. I said that was the last one. One more real quick. How could I not go back to the national championship game and pull this one out? Now, a lot of people are going, this poor woman, she's an idiot. The woman who was driving the golf cart, look for the video again. I can't do everything justice with my descriptions. You've got to see the video. This woman who was taking head coach Ryan Day, quarterback Will Howard, and a couple other players to a press conference after they won, Ohio State won the national championship. She literally drove the golf cart carrying all these guys into a concrete wall. Bent the axle on the golf cart. So they all had to walk, and everybody's having a good laugh. Isn't this funny? Isn't this great? Ryan Day didn't like it, and I don't blame him. I'm not the biggest Ryan Day fan in the world, but he looked pissed. And I don't blame him. One of the greatest moments in his life. And he's got to put up with an idiot woman driver who can't navigate a golf cart in an empty corridor. And I'm not ripping on women drivers. Okay? She just happens to be a female driver. I know plenty of great female drivers. She ain't one of them. So your nominees for the Red Foreman Dumbass of the Week. That woman who smashed, crashed, trashed the golf cart after the OSU victory. The evil Dan Hurley. The NBA for their stupid, gimmicky all-star voting. Texans cornerback Chris Boyd and his head coach D'Amico Ryans. Philadelphia Mayor Sherelle Parker. And twice for ESPN. Once with Coco Gauff and again with the misspelling of Martin Luther King Jr. Personally, for me, I really thought until earlier today it was going to be a no-brainer. It was going to be ESPN. They've got 2 nominations. How could it not be ESPN? But then Dan Hurley, that story came out from last night. He, to me, is the sports world's version of Joy Behar. He is evil. And I will never, ever, ever root for UConn until he takes an anger management class or does something to actually start acting like he wants to be a member of a sane and normal society. So my dumbass of the week is Dan Hurley, head coach of the UConn men's basketball team. And that will do it for a very long Sports Frenzy 2.0. This is the problem when Dave's not here. Nobody keeps me in check, and I ramble and I ramble and I ramble. And this is what you get. This is what you get. You get 2 hours. 2 hours. Over 2 hours of sports talk. I personally love it. I hope you guys did as well. Check out the weekend edition, which I guarantee will not be nearly as long. That usually is an hour and a half max. My review of the original, the first Den of Thieves, Squid Game 2, the classic Rolling Stones documentary, Give Me Shelter, and much, much more. So we'll check you out this Saturday morning, January the 25th. If pop culture commentary, politically incorrect pop culture commentary isn't your thing, we'll see you back here in 7 days. The Conquistador will be back, which means we'll shave about an hour off of this podcast because he'll tell me, shut up, Kev, and I will. But until then, have a great week. We'll see you this weekend, or we will talk to you again in 7 days. Peace out, everybody.